In a world where rhythm and reflexes reign supreme, the cartographers of the chords plot many paths through every melody, yet there can be only one victor in the battle of the beat maps.
Why, hello there! Zoe Trabic here with a brand new channel feature I'm calling The Battle of the Beat Maps. In this series, I'll present head-to-head comparisons of different beat mappers' interpretations of the same exact music. Well, not exact in this case. In this inaugural episode, I'm going to compare 4 takes on the 1979 hit song Moscow by pop act Genghis Khan. In order of release, we have the original track as mapped by Evil Boomer, an up-tempo Nightcore cover mapped by Philidis, the Dope Drop remix mapped in collaboration by Heisenberg and Rex, and the Camellia cover mapped by D125. If you don't have time to watch the full comparison, you can skip to the version you're most interested in by jumping to these timestamps, which I've also provided as clickable links in the video description below. And at the very end of this video, I'll announce which map I feel came out on top and why. Now, unlike my Dick Moves Beat Mappers Make series, which you should also check out, see the link at upper right, my focus here is not on what went wrong in each map, but rather to highlight the diversity of approaches mappers take to the same song. And even though there can be only one victor, in truth, I enjoy playing all 4 of these, so there are certainly no losers in this batch. Anyway, enough preamble, let the battle commence! Right out of the gate, we see an interesting contrast between an optimal and a less optimal method of presenting left-right alternating cube cut progressions. So basically, at the moment, we've got these more comfortable down to the left and right cuts, but look what's happening. We're snapping back up into a plane. And horizontal and plane sawing is less comfortable for your player because they have to lock their elbows and sweep to the left and right. Now, obviously, it's a choice. If you want to make it, it's not a problem, but perhaps don't make the whole map that way because it will exhaust your player. Let's see, we have some of these single cube with walls, and they're less effective as obstacles because if you want to force your player to step to one side or the other, you should probably make them double width so they can't step on the side you don't want them to. First technical cut of the map. If I come across as critical, I don't mean to. I'm just observing things as I spot them in the map. But at this point, it's more of a hard, maybe a hard plus difficulty map, although I think that's about to change with some upcoming technical cuts. Yeah, here we go. Here's a little sequence of technical cuts and another one as well. So this is what's earning the map more of a expert level, although albeit a low expert level status, which, just to be clear, is the difficulty rating that Evil Boomer did assign to this particular map. Look, micro corridor. So obviously this is maintaining the expert level difficulty fairly well at this point, and I guess my main complaint would be visibility. There's a lot of visual occlusion going on here, which prevents your players from knowing what's coming behind the cubes that are blocking their view. Let's see, there are some of these kind of clash in the middle outside-in cuts, which again, not great for the health of your players' controllers. But yeah, this is all fairly reasonable, and obviously it's to the beat, so that's satisfying. And at this point, the map does seem to start repeating previous segments, which, is fine. This is the full-length version of the song, so there's a lot of space to fill. The one thing I would suggest is if, as a beat mapper, you do choose to use entire cube sequences, that you just invert them to mix things up. Oh, this is nice. That's new. So yeah, basically, if it was blue cubes before, make them red cubes. If they were on the left, make them on the right, and that way at least you're, giving your players the exercise with both arms to try the same tactics. Oops, boy, I suck. So let's see. So as you can see, yeah, there's enough in the way of technical cuts to keep this just within the expert range. I'd say again, pretty low expert, but still a fairly satisfying map. Anyway, I quite like these paired diagonal cuts in between the walls, but that was the world's shortest wall run. Some technical cuts. Again, this is clearly, at this point, established itself as an expert level map, which is great. Earlier on, the cube density was low enough that it felt more like a hard map. Some non-directionals on the other side. Yep, okay, so, and repeating the entire sequence again, fair enough. So yeah, I think we probably don't have to play through the rest of this. You get the general idea. Oh, and for the love of God, don't enter a map on interpenetrating diagonals. It's just rude. So, TLDR, we have here a fairly reasonable first stab at mapping the song, suffering only from occasional repetition and patches of poor visibility. So, Philidus has chosen to map the Nightcore variant of this song, by which we can infer it's going to be a sped-up version. Now, this beginning's a little sparse, but it does let you get into the mood of the music. And, oh, here come some cubes. So yeah, we have these nicely spaced-out diagonal slices, so these encourage broad, energetic strokes. And then it's followed up by these nice paired red and blue vertical cuts. So these, this is a pretty high-energy beginning. It's nice. Oh, and then we follow with some slightly technical orthogonal cuts. So, yes, Philidus has classified this as a hard level map, and obviously the speed and the low cube density would confirm that. But yeah, these orthogonal cuts are probably the high end of hard or possibly low expert level. So we have these single cube at the walls, but they are at the very edges of the 4 cube grid, so there's no way to step on the other side of them. And now we seem to be entering into yeah, there's a run of these alternating non-parallel crossover cuts at left and right, so that's it's very satisfying. These are good technical cuts. They're definitely what I consider expert level cuts. So up and overhead in parallel cuts, and then inside out cuts with a bit of low clearance. So yeah, actually, there's a lot to say here. These are all fairly technical cuts, and I would normally classify these as ones that you'd expect to find in an expert level map. But obviously, the cube density here and the jump speed is low enough that I guess, yeah, you can call this a hard map. Probably a high end of hard, really. So yeah, it's more when it goes back to these well spaced out single cube cuts that it feels like a bog standard hard level map. And obviously once you get back into the paired cuts, especially technical ones like these orthogonals, that it moves up the range and feels like a higher end hard map. So yeah, as you can see, we're repeating the sequence at this point. There's the walls again. We're going to have some more orthogonal cuts, and then I guess we'll have the non-parallel cuts, and finally the run of overhead and plane cuts. So I'm not going to play out the whole thing because, you all have busy lives. But yeah, this is clearly a fun map that has no obvious major failings. So yeah, I can highly recommend this, especially if you don't want to spend 4.5 minutes playing the full length of Genghis Khan. This is what, 3.5, something like that. So let's skip to the end. So in summary, this is an entertaining mid to high hard level map whose only very minor defect, I guess, would be those slightly awkward horizontal overhead and plane cuts, but otherwise, good stuff. So, third in release order, we have this collaboration between Heisenberg and Rex. They chose the Dope Drop remix of Moscow and released it as a ostensibly expert plus difficulty map, though I take issue with that. We'll get to that in a moment. This has nice initial flow. There's a little roll, a crossover. The speed is right on the threshold between hard and expert, so that's quite good. And obviously, the fact that this has a lot more bass in it makes it have a nice punchy feel, so that's cool. Okay, yeah, those two horizontal and plane cuts were they were slightly cramped. I mean, not too bad, I guess, but oh, here we go again and again. So yeah, obviously it's a skill you develop the more expert maps you play, but initially players will have trouble. They'll probably clip one or the other of them with the blade of the other saber as they're going through. And this map does maintain a nice expert level cube density throughout. Oh, a nice little roll here. Also, you can see there's a good deal of precision required in the alternating crossover slices that from one side of the grid to the other. Oop, crouch wall. Yeah, and then these sort of like low clearance inside out cuts, but obviously they're not on a plane, so they provide a player with a lot more, they're slightly more forgiving, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it's a pretty nice progression here. Again, I wouldn't say I can crouch again. I wouldn't say it's expert plus by any stretch, but then again, that's just my uninformed opinion. This is a fairly empty section of the map. Ooh, I like the zoomy wall effects, cool. But yeah, as a general rule, try to populate all these sections of an Expert Plus map. There shouldn't be a lot of dead space. But yeah, I like these paired diagonal crossover cuts. They're good. I mean, there's a lot of features to like in this map, but it's a solid expert. There's something about the cube density or the jump speed or the zoomy or the or even the technical cuts like the rolls are slow enough that they're not really expert plus rolls. So yeah, I would rate this a solid expert and definitely not an expert plus map. And yeah, case in point with that roll right there. It's nice and slow. Yeah, it's all good fun. I think I've run out of things to say, so I will zip to the end and we can look at the final entry in this particular Battle of the Beam map. So, an executive summary, we have here a satisfying, well-balanced map with some kind of cool wall effects and good overall flow. It has some sparse sections, but they're not deal breakers, and the only other thing I'd say is it's definitely not fast or technical enough to warrant that Expert Plus rating. So here's a map that wastes no time getting technical right out of the gate. I mean, look at these pulse-paired crossovers coming down the center of the map. They're kind of coupled with these diagonal upcuts to left and right, and then we have a little mini roll from right to left, and then this cool stacked edge progression, which requires very tight timing. God, this is really quite challenging, isn't it? So then, let's see, we move into this thing where, oh yeah, suddenly we start adding these non-directional cubes that float up out of the pack, so you have to like do these really broad sweeps to make sure you intercept them. Fun fact, D125 has rated the difficulty of this as merely expert level. I would humbly beg to differ. I'd say that even if we just look at the cube density and the jump speed alone, not even considering the technicality of the cuts, and there are highly technical cuts throughout this map, that this is clearly an Expert Plus map. Oh, lovely little roll here. Ooh, it gets quite fierce, doesn't it? As you can see, another recurring feature of this map are these precision parallel cuts that you need to be able to execute, particularly for those staggered left-right paired sweeps. Here's some more of them. But yeah, it's a very intense little map. Very satisfying, obviously, to get through it this far without making a mistake. I'm sure I'm just jinxed it now. Yup. So, returning to the edge progression now, which still is very satisfying. Oh look, D125 has replaced the non-directional floaty cubes with ones that have up arrows. So that's quite good. It's like the training wheels are off, although to be fair, the flow direction is naturally an upsweep, so that makes perfect sense. Not too mean-spirited, this map. I like it. Challenging, but fair. Huh. Did I mention highly technical? So back to the edge progression. Oh, and back to our non-directional cubes. So yeah, mixing it up a bit. That's nice. Stave off any monotony. And our old friends, the central crossovers. Ah, some stacked diagonals and some stacked verticals to go with them. I love the pounding beat with this. It's so good. It's a nice version of this song. Nothing finer than a well-executed side-to-side roll. And throwing in a few occasional central crouch walls to to keep you on your toes. Watching this just reminds me how much I miss Hit Score Visualizer. I really hope that mod gets fixed soon. I see my combos approaching 600, so almost certainly time for me to screw up again. Yup. A peaceful, calm section where we can catch our breath. Always appreciated. I'm not actually mocking, I do value these. Especially when your arms are about to fall off. Oops, bombs. Yeah, okay, so you get a chance to break, but don't let your guard down too much. I like how without the bass, this section has an almost chiptune sound to it. And another nice little roll. Anywho, since it appears I will run out of clever things to say, assuming I had any to begin with, let's just cut to the chase. Wait, sorry, I forgot there was one small beef I did have with this map, and that concerns that looming crouch wall you can see ahead of us. Basically, the moment you come out from behind that, you enter this unnecessarily punishing final run to the finish line, and that includes everything from a quick mini side-to-side roll, followed by a long run of far left-right stacked cube cuts, interspersed with those internal crossovers that we've been seeing. It all just feels, well, an unnecessarily harsh note to end an otherwise fun map on. As a beat mapper, you should always bear in mind that, especially at this difficulty level, there are going to be players who are only going to reach this point in your map by the very skin of their teeth, and it seems really mean-spirited to let someone get within 10 seconds or 15 seconds of the end of your map and then bail them out completely by throwing the kitchen sink at them when you didn't really have to. So yeah, I'm just suggesting you don't have to make the end of your maps a dawdle, but perhaps, just pull back on the throttle a little bit. Just a suggestion. Hopefully the big smile on my face is sufficient evidence that even when a map totally kicks my ass, I can still obtain some enjoyment from it. Well, I guess, most of the time at any rate. But yeah, there you have it. An extremely challenging, but also extremely satisfying Expert Plus map by D125, and one that only ends a bit more mercilessly than it absolutely needed to. And so now I'm supposed to declare the victor, which I've been dreading. Don't hate me. Obviously all these maps are perfectly playable. The more attentive among you will probably have worked out that the ones I spent the most time talking about might include my least and most favorite of the four maps. So just to nail my colors to the mast here, I'd say the Evil Boomer map is by far the most rough and ready of the four offerings, whereas my personal favorite is the Camellia Hands Up Bootleg by D125, purely based on the challenge rating. It's not that it's a perfect map, but it's a very satisfying one. But, and I'm sure this will come as a shock to everyone, that this is not all about me. So if we're looking at the needs of the average player, say operating somewhere in the hard to expert difficulty range, then it's clearly got to be one of the other two offerings. So I would say if you're looking for a less taxing experience, but one that is satisfying and well constructed, go for the Nightcore Remix by Philidus. But probably the sweet spot for difficulty between hard and expert plus has got to be the Dope Drop Remix by Heisenberg and Rex. So congrats you two on winning this very first Battle of the Beat Maps, but just remember it was a very close call. Well, wasn't that fun? If you agree, there's a few things you can do, like click the like button or leave me some feedback as a comment or subscribe if you're not already subscribed to my channel. All of these things help. And if you'd like to move beyond that and support the channel and the videos I do in a more substantive fashion, I've listed a number of sort of donation options here on this final slide. Right, I think that's about it, and I'll look forward to seeing you all in future videos. Take care.